AITA for refusing to babysit my sister's kids, even though she's desperate. And now everyone thinks I'm a villain? So, here's the situation. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Jenna, 32F, even though we're very different people. I'm very independent, career-focused, and value my personal space and downtime, while she is more spontaneous, social, and has 3 kids under the age of 8. Over the years, she's leaned on me quite a bit for babysitting, favors, and general help. And I've tried to help when I could, but there's a line between being helpful and being exploited. A few months ago, Jenna had a meltdown over her schedule. She had signed up for a week-long work conference and claimed she had no one to watch the kids. Her husband is mostly hands-off when it comes to childcare, working long hours, and traveling for work frequently. She called me crying, saying she was desperate and begging me to take all 3 kids for the week. I hesitated because I had a very important work project coming up that I couldn't postpone. I also live alone, and my apartment isn't exactly set up for 3 kids. I explained all of this to her, offered some alternative options like a nearby daycare or a trusted neighbor who could watch them, and even offered to take one day if she really needed a break, but she insisted that wasn't enough. She said that if I couldn't take them, she'd have to cancel the conference, which was a big deal for her job. I told her honestly that I just couldn't do it and that I was sorry. She got angry and accused me of being selfish and not supporting family. I tried to explain that supporting her didn't mean completely sacrificing my life and that I also needed to protect my career and mental health. She eventually found a friend to cover for the week, but it seemed like that was only after she had exhausted everyone else. After that incident, things got tense. Jenna started posting subtle comments on social media about family who don't step up and people who put work before loved ones, and I started getting texts from mutual friends asking if I was really that cold to refuse. My parents also called me, saying I should have been more accommodating. I tried to explain that I helped when I could, but taking 3 young kids for a week was literally impossible for me without ruining my work commitments and personal life. They didn't seem to accept it, and now there's this lingering tension in the family. Things escalated last week. Jenna was going out of town for a weekend retreat and asked me again, this time to watch all 3 kids for 2 days. I said no up front and offered to come by and help with dinner for one evening instead. She threw a fit, saying that I always put my career above family and that I was the reason she felt trapped in her own life. I refused to let guilt-tripping dictate my choices and told her firmly that I would not be taking the kids, but I'd still help in ways that were feasible for me. Jenna responded by posting on social media about people who claim to care but never actually show up when it matters, tagging me indirectly, and some of our friends and family chimed in. Now I feel like I'm being painted as the villain in this situation. On one hand, I really do care about my sister and her kids, but on the other hand, I feel like my boundaries are being completely ignored and that my own life is being devalued. I even offered solutions like paying for a babysitter or coordinating with daycare centers, but apparently those weren't acceptable because she wanted family time with the kids while she was away. I feel like that's not my responsibility. I'm not a parent, I don't live near her, and I simply cannot take on that level of childcare without it destroying my schedule and mental health. Some of our mutual friends say I should step up for family, and this is what sisters do, while others say I'm justified in setting boundaries. My parents seem to be leaning toward her side, which makes me frustrated because I feel like my intentions are being twisted. I try to support her in small ways, but it's never enough for her. I even feel that if I give in, it will only make things worse in the long run because she'll expect me to drop everything every time she has a scheduling conflict. So now I'm stuck. I don't want to be estranged from my sister, but I also don't want to be bullied or guilt-tripped into doing things that are genuinely impossible for me. I've tried talking to her calmly about boundaries and even offered compromises, but she keeps framing it as me being cold and unloving. I feel like I'm doing the right thing by maintaining my boundaries, but everyone around me seems to disagree. Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit my sister's kids, even when she claims she's desperate, especially since some people see me as unsupportive or selfish? Or are my boundaries reasonable given the circumstances? I just want a clear answer because I'm worried this will continue to escalate, and I really don't want my relationship with her and the rest of my family to deteriorate over this. Has anyone else dealt with a situation where family expects constant sacrifice without understanding limits? How do you maintain boundaries without being painted as the villain? Idea prasieta an unist perspectiva. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering what she asked of me. I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I work a steady job, save my money, and generally try to avoid drama. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, has always been more carefree. She's charming and fun, but sometimes she expects people to bend over backwards for her convenience. I have tolerated it over the years, but recently, something happened that has me questioning my place in the family entirely. Emily got engaged about a year ago. From the start, she made it clear she wanted a big wedding. She started talking about guest lists, venues, dresses, and everything else. I didn't mind helping where I could, but as time went on, her requests turned into what felt like demands. I tried to stay out of it at first, but then it escalated. Around 6 months ago, Emily called me to ask for a favor. She told me that she had decided she wanted a very specific type of floral arrangement for the wedding. Expensive exotic flowers that would cost upwards of $2,000. That's when she asked me to pay for them. At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed nervously and said, "You know, I don't have that kind of money, right?" She insisted, saying that since I have a stable job and she doesn't, it was only fair that I cover it. She framed it as a family contribution, but it felt more like an obligation forced upon me. I explained to her that my budget is limited. I live in a small apartment, I'm saving for a car, and I can't afford $2,000 on flowers for someone else's wedding. She got upset and said that if I didn't pay, it would ruin her entire vision. I suggested looking for cheaper options or asking other family members for contributions, but she refused. Over the next few weeks, she kept sending me articles and Instagram posts about these exact flowers, trying to guilt me into agreeing. I finally blocked her on social media for my own sanity, which made her even angrier. Then came the next request. Emily said she wanted me to be in charge of the seating chart. I'm normally organized and detail-oriented, so I said I could help, but she quickly added conditions. I had to coordinate with every single guest individually, make sure everyone's dietary restrictions were accommodated, and deal with complaints if someone didn't like where they were sitting. She also wanted me to personally pay for any last-minute requests that arose, like adding extra tables or upgrading certain chairs. I told her this sounded like a full-time job and that I didn't feel comfortable footing the bill. She accused me of being selfish and not wanting to help her. It didn't stop there. Emily insisted that I handle the bridesmaids' dresses. I'm already struggling financially, and she wanted me to cover the cost of my own dress plus one for the maid of honor, who is our cousin. That's about $600 for my dress alone. I told her I could only afford my own dress, and she got furious. She said that if I couldn't pay, I couldn't be in the wedding at all. I was shocked. I've always been there for her, supporting her emotionally and financially in small ways when I could, but this felt like an overstep. At this point, I decided I needed to have a serious conversation with her. I sat down and explained that I love her. I want her to have a wonderful wedding, but I cannot take on all these expenses and responsibilities. I told her that I could contribute in ways that were reasonable for me, like helping with DIY decorations, researching venues, or assisting on the day itself, but not paying thousands of dollars or managing every single aspect of the wedding. She reacted by yelling at me and calling me cold and unsupportive. She accused me of ruining her dreams and said that if I wasn't going to do everything she wanted, I shouldn't even come. I tried to stay calm and told her that I was willing to help in a way that made sense for me, but she refused to compromise. The last straw came when she said that if I didn't pay for the flowers and dresses and handle the seating chart exactly as she wanted, she would rethink having me at the wedding at all. That felt like emotional blackmail. After thinking about it for several days, I decided to refuse. I wrote her a long message explaining that I loved her and that I wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, but I could not comply with her demands. I told her that attending under these circumstances would make me resentful and that it wouldn't be fair to either of us. I ended the message by saying that I hoped she could understand and that I would still celebrate with her in other ways, like helping plan a small post-wedding gathering. She responded by blocking me and telling our parents that I had disrespected her and refused to be a part of her wedding. My parents are disappointed in me and say I should reconsider because family comes first and sisters should support each other. My friends all tell me that she is being unreasonable, but I can't shake the guilt. I have never walked away from family events before, and the thought of not being at her wedding makes me sad, but the pressure she's putting on me feels impossible. I've tried reasoning with her, compromising, and explaining my situation, but she keeps escalating. I feel like I'm being punished for having boundaries and for not having unlimited financial resources. Part of me wonders if I am overreacting or being selfish by refusing to attend. On the other hand, I feel like if I give in, I'll be completely exploited and the relationship will be even more strained in the long term. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of what she demanded of me financially and organizationally. I don't want to ruin our relationship, but I also can't allow myself to be used in this way. Has anyone else had a similar experience with a family member making unreasonable demands for their wedding? How do you navigate being supportive without being taken advantage of? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always been close with my family, particularly my younger sister, Emma, 25F. We grew up in a pretty tight-knit household, and while we've had the usual sibling squabbles, we've always had each other's backs. Recently, though, things have gotten complicated, and I'm struggling to figure out if I'm being unreasonable. I feel like I need an outside perspective because my family is split and everyone is pressuring me in different directions. About 6 months ago, Emma started dating a man named Derek, 27M. At first, I was cautiously optimistic. I've always tried to give people a fair chance, and he seemed nice enough in passing conversations. However, as time went on, I started noticing behaviors that made me uncomfortable. Derek can be controlling and dismissive. For example, he would often correct Emma in front of me about small things, or speak for her, as if she couldn't express herself. It wasn't extreme at first, just enough to raise my eyebrows. But over time, his behavior escalated. I noticed he would make subtle digs at my family during conversations, often disguised as jokes. At first, I chalked it up to awkward humor, but it became increasingly frequent and pointed. I also noticed he had a habit of gaslighting Emma about minor disagreements, and she seemed to accept it without question. I brought my concerns to Emma carefully. I told her I was worried about how Derek treated her and how he sometimes dismissed her feelings. She would get defensive and say I was overreacting. She insisted that he loved her and that I was misinterpreting things. I tried to back off because I didn't want to push her away, but I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. My worry only increased when Emma announced that she and Derek were engaged. She was thrilled, of course, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was rushing into a serious commitment with someone who didn't treat her well. Over the next few months, I tried to maintain a neutral relationship with Derek. I would interact politely when we were around each other, but I never forced myself to engage more than necessary. I also noticed that he seemed to subtly undermine me during family gatherings, often making sarcastic remarks about my career or choices in front of others. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder. I started avoiding situations where he would be present, which upset some family members. The breaking point came when Emma and Derek started planning their wedding. Initially, I was excited for her, but things quickly became stressful. Derek insisted on having a very rigid wedding plan, which seemed to exclude anyone who didn't fit his vision. He pushed for a small bridal party and explicitly told Emma he didn't want me in it. Emma initially tried to argue with him, but eventually conceded. I felt hurt, but didn't want to cause drama, so I agreed to attend the wedding as a guest, despite feeling unwelcome. As the wedding date approached, I started noticing more red flags. Derek began pressuring Emma to cut off certain friends and distant relatives, claiming they weren't supportive enough. He also started trying to micromanage the wedding details, down to what my parents should wear and where my friends should sit. It felt like he was trying to control every aspect of her life. I raised these concerns with Emma again, hoping she would see my perspective. This time, she told me in no uncertain terms that I needed to respect her choices and stop interfering. I understood that, but I also felt like I couldn't stand by silently while someone I love was being manipulated. A week before the wedding, an incident occurred that made me finally make my decision. Derek had a disagreement with Emma's maid of honor over the seating arrangement. He yelled at her in front of Emma and my parents, and when Emma tried to defend her friend, Derek dismissed her entirely, saying she was overreacting. I felt like this was the culmination of everything I had observed over the past year: controlling, dismissive, and disrespectful behavior. I realized I could not, in good conscience, support a wedding for someone who treated my sister this way. I told Emma that I would not be attending the wedding. I explained that I loved her and that I wanted her to be happy, but I could not be present to celebrate what I saw as an unhealthy relationship. I tried to make it clear that this was about Derek's behavior, not her, but she was furious. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness and told me I was being selfish. Our parents were also upset. My mom said I was being dramatic and that I should put aside personal feelings for one day. My dad was quieter but seemed disappointed. My younger brother sided with me, saying he also noticed Derek's controlling tendencies, but he felt powerless to confront Emma. Since then, the family dynamic has been tense. Emma has barely spoken to me and has mostly interacted with me through curt messages. Some relatives have called me an attention seeker, saying that family weddings are meant to be supportive no matter what. Others have privately thanked me for being honest and looking out for Emma. I've tried reaching out to her gently, but she remains distant. I can't help feeling torn between my love for my sister and my inability to support what I see as a toxic situation. I know I might seem harsh, but I can't ignore the fact that I've spent months observing Derek's behavior and how it affects Emma. I also recognize that this is Emma's choice and that she is an adult capable of making her own decisions. But attending her wedding would feel like endorsing a relationship I believe is harmful. I've considered going just to avoid family drama, but I worry that my presence would send the wrong message to Emma and the rest of the family. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I genuinely don't want to hurt Emma, but I also feel like I have to stand by my principles. The situation has left me feeling guilty, anxious, and unsure of where I stand in my family. I'm hoping for a candid perspective because I feel like I'm stuck between protecting my sister and respecting her choices, and I'm not sure which side of the line I'm on. AITA for refusing to help my sister move, even though she insists I owe her. This all started a few months ago. My sister, Emily, has always been a bit high-strung and dramatic, but we generally get along. We grew up in a small town, and after college, I moved to a bigger city for work. Emily stayed behind and got a job in education. She's always had this tendency to expect family to drop everything for her, and I've usually gone along with it, but recently I've started setting boundaries. A few weeks ago, Emily called me out of the blue. She was moving to a new apartment closer to the city where I live, and she wanted me to help her pack, drive, and unload. She was very dramatic about it, saying she couldn't do it without me and that no one else in the family was available. I have a demanding job, and I can only take limited time off, so I told her I could help for a few hours on one day, but I couldn't commit to an entire weekend. That apparently wasn't enough. She immediately started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "I've always been there for you. You should be there for me, and family should help each other no matter what." I reminded her that while I love her, my job is important and I have responsibilities. I even offered to help organize movers or pack boxes in advance, but she got more upset and accused me of being selfish. I thought the conversation was over, but then she started sending long texts every day about how stressed she was, how overwhelmed she felt, and how unfair it was that I wasn't dropping everything for her. She even tried to involve our parents, framing it as me not helping family in a time of need. Our parents were frustrated because they knew my schedule, and they agreed I couldn't realistically spend the whole weekend helping. Finally, she came up with another plan. She wanted me to take a day off, drive 4 hours to her place, spend the day packing and loading her stuff, drive back the same day, and then be ready for work the next morning. I pointed out that this was logistically insane, and she got furious. She accused me of making excuses and not caring about her. I told her I wasn't going to do it, and I suggested she hire professional movers instead. She refused and said I was abandoning her and that our relationship would suffer if I didn't help. I reminded her that we've always had a good relationship and that I was willing to help in reasonable ways, but she said my reasonable ways weren't good enough. Things escalated further when she posted on social media about how family should support each other and tagged me. I didn't respond, and several friends and relatives reached out to me privately, asking why I wasn't helping. I explained my side, but a few people suggested I was being selfish and should just help my sister. A few days later, Emily moved anyway, hiring movers. She called me afterward, acting coldly, and said, "I guess you didn't care enough to help me. Maybe next time you'll put family first." I was frustrated because I did offer help, just not on her terms. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting I apologize, but I felt like I didn't do anything wrong that required an apology. I did apologize for not being able to meet her expectations, but I didn't offer to redo the day. Now, a month later, our relationship is strained. Emily barely speaks to me, and when we do communicate, it's tense. I feel like she's being unreasonable, and I also feel bad that our relationship has suffered. I keep replaying the situation in my head, wondering if I should have just taken time off to help her despite my workload. I want to maintain a good relationship with my sister, but I also feel like setting boundaries is important. I'm not sure if I handled this correctly or if I should have gone above and beyond despite my own schedule. I've been thinking about this constantly, and I feel torn between standing my ground and trying to mend a relationship. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister move the way she wanted, even though she insists I owe her because I've been there for her in the past. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though she's upset with me. I, 34F, have always had a pretty close relationship with my younger sister, Emma, 29F. We grew up in a small town, and even though we've lived in different cities for the last 10 years, we still try to see each other at least a couple of times a year. Emma has always been more dramatic and emotionally expressive than I am, but I've generally been happy to support her in her ventures, even when they were a little over the top. The problem started when she got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 31M, about a year ago. When Emma announced the engagement, I was thrilled. I knew she had been seeing Mark for a while and was serious about him. However, almost immediately after the engagement, she started hinting that she wanted to have the wedding at my house. At the time, I had just bought a new home with my partner, Alex, 36M. It's a beautiful house, but it's not very big. It's a 3-bedroom with an open-plan living area. I expressed concerns about space and logistics, but Emma brushed them off, saying she always loved my house and it would be perfect for her dream wedding. I thought she was joking at first, but she was dead serious. Over the next few months, Emma became increasingly insistent. She sent me Pinterest boards with decorations she wanted, guest lists that included over 100 people, and even detailed floor plans for the ceremony and reception areas. I tried to explain gently that hosting that many people in my home wasn't feasible, and that I would feel uncomfortable with such a large event in a private residence. She accused me of being unsupportive and selfish, claiming that I was the only person who could give her the wedding she deserved. I tried to compromise, suggesting a smaller, intimate gathering or offering to help with the venue costs elsewhere, but nothing seemed to satisfy her. She became increasingly dramatic, saying things like, "I can't believe my own sister won't let me have my perfect wedding." Things came to a head about 2 months ago. Emma showed up at my house unannounced with Mark and a few of their friends, all bearing flowers, decorations, and even some catering equipment. They told me they were going to set up the wedding here anyway, arguing that I couldn't just say no to my sister. I was furious. I told them in no uncertain terms that they could not use my home for the wedding under any circumstances. I reminded Emma that I had already explained multiple times why it wasn't possible and that showing up uninvited with wedding decorations was completely inappropriate. Emma cried, yelled, and accused me of being heartless, and Mark tried to mediate but mostly just sided with her, saying I was overreacting. After they left, I felt exhausted and betrayed. Since then, Emma has been sending me daily messages, some pleading, some angry, all expressing her disappointment that I won't let her have her dream wedding at my house. She has even called my parents and tried to enlist them to persuade me. My parents, for the record, are supportive of me and agree that my home is my space and I have the right to refuse. Alex has been incredibly supportive throughout this and agrees with me that hosting a large wedding in a small home is unreasonable and would create unnecessary stress and tension. He suggested that I just let her do what she wants, but I know it would create huge conflict in the household and probably ruin our relationship. I understand that Emma is upset and that she had a vision for her wedding, but I feel like her insistence crossed a boundary. I'm willing to help her find a venue, contribute in other ways, and even host smaller pre-wedding events like showers or rehearsal dinners at my home. But the actual wedding with over 100 guests is simply not something I can or want to accommodate. I've tried to communicate this calmly and reasonably, but Emma insists that I'm being unreasonable in that. I'm prioritizing my comfort over her happiness. I feel stuck. I love my sister, and I want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I also feel that she's being completely unfair in demanding that I give up my personal space for her event. I'm worried that if I continue to refuse, our relationship will deteriorate further. But I also can't imagine agreeing to host the wedding without feeling resentful or stressed. I'm starting to wonder if I am really the unreasonable one here. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though she's upset with me? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension finally boiled over? I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 33F. Growing up, she was the golden child, smart, athletic, charming, and I was often left feeling invisible in her shadow. Our parents were oblivious, always praising her and dismissing my accomplishments. As adults, I try to maintain a cordial relationship, but it's always been a roller coaster of resentment and jealousy, especially on my part. I've worked hard to manage my feelings, but they occasionally surface. Emily got engaged last year, and immediately, everything became about her. Invitations, planning, even conversations turned into her life story. I tried to be supportive, genuinely, but the wedding planning emails, phone calls, and social media posts quickly became overwhelming. It didn't help that she repeatedly brought up my personal life, or lack thereof, in front of family members. I'm single and have no children, and Emily made a habit of joking that I'd probably be alone at her wedding, sitting in the corner with a bag of chips. I laughed it off at first, but the comments kept piling up, and they stung more than I wanted to admit. The breaking point came about 3 months ago. Emily asked me to be a bridesmaid. I hesitated because I had a growing list of grievances, and I knew being part of the wedding would require me to spend money, time, and emotional energy on something that would mostly make me feel uncomfortable. When I expressed my concerns honestly, she accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. Her friends also got involved, suggesting I was jealous and needed to get over myself. My parents chimed in, insisting that I was overreacting and should just put my feelings aside for one day. I tried compromise. I offered to help in smaller ways, assisting with wedding invitations, helping with errands, contributing financially without being a bridesmaid. Emily rejected these suggestions, saying that my presence on the day itself was non-negotiable. Her tone implied that my refusal would be unforgivable. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. She started texting me multiple times a day, expecting immediate responses to questions about dresses, hair, and other wedding details. She would guilt-trip me, sending messages like, "I can't believe you'd let me down after everything we've been through," even though I had never wronged her intentionally. I began to dread interacting with her. The final straw came 2 weeks ago. Emily invited me to a family brunch to discuss seating arrangements. I decided to go, hoping to smooth things over. During the brunch, she openly criticized me in front of relatives, saying I had let jealousy consume me, and that my refusal to participate as a bridesmaid shows who I really am. I tried to respond calmly, explaining my perspective, but my words were dismissed. Several family members backed her up, and I felt humiliated. I left the brunch early, feeling physically and emotionally drained. That night, I made a decision. I texted Emily to explain that I would not be attending the wedding at all. I emphasized that I cared about her and wanted her to have a happy day, but I could not be present without compromising my own mental health. I offered to send a gift and write a personal note for the ceremony, but she responded by calling me a toxic sister and claiming I was ruining the family dynamic. Since then, the fallout has been intense. My parents are furious with me, claiming I've destroyed years of family relationships over my ego. Emily has posted several passive-aggressive messages on social media about people who choose themselves over family and tag me in one. Some relatives have reached out to express disappointment, while a few have privately supported my decision, saying they've seen how Emily can be manipulative. I feel torn. On one hand, I genuinely try to be supportive and compromise. I also feel that prioritizing my own emotional well-being is valid, even if it means stepping away from a major family event. On the other hand, I know this decision has caused pain and disappointment for my parents and some family members, and I worry that I'm being seen as cruel or selfish. I'm still struggling with guilt, but I also feel a sense of relief knowing I won't have to endure another emotionally exhausting interaction under the guise of family duty. I understand that weddings are significant for many people, and my absence will be noticed, but I can't ignore how toxic and draining the situation has become. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension and emotional manipulation finally reached a point where I had to put myself first. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 32F, have always been very close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a small town, and for the longest time, we were inseparable. I was the kind of older sister who knew everything about her little sister's life, from school crushes to major life decisions. Emily and I shared everything, and I honestly thought that bond would last forever. That is, until she started dating Daniel, 30M. I first met Daniel 2 years ago at a family dinner. At the time, I didn't want to judge too quickly, but there was something about him that immediately put me on edge. He seemed overly controlling and had a sharp, cutting sense of humor that often made the room uncomfortable. When he spoke, I noticed how dismissive he was of Emily's opinions, often interrupting her or finishing her sentences in a way that made her seem incapable of speaking for herself. I chalked it up to first impressions and tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Emily was head over heels for him, and I didn't want to ruin her happiness. As time went on, my discomfort with Daniel only grew. I started noticing patterns. He would constantly joke about Emily's appearance, subtly criticizing her choices under the guise of humor. He would also make decisions for her without consulting her, like booking trips or buying furniture she didn't like. The final straw for me was when Emily confided in me that Daniel had pressured her to quit her job to focus more on their relationship. Emily, being the loyal person she is, didn't want to upset him, so she reluctantly agreed. I tried to talk to her about how unhealthy this seemed, but she insisted that Daniel loved her and she loved him back. She said I was overreacting, that I didn't understand their relationship, and that I should support her. A few months later, Emily announced they were engaged. I was genuinely happy for her in theory, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was ignoring red flags that were glaringly obvious. I tried to be supportive, but limited my interaction with Daniel. Over time, things escalated. Daniel began subtly excluding me from conversations when I was around, making snide remarks, and even insulting my career choices in front of Emily. One day, he openly mocked my appearance, laughing at something entirely benign I said. Emily brushed it off as him being sarcastic, but I found it humiliating. I told her I could no longer be around him without feeling disrespected. She became defensive, saying that I was overreacting and that my behavior was causing tension in her life. She asked me to just be happy for her, which I tried, but every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily and Daniel are insisting that all family members attend pre-wedding events, including engagement parties, rehearsal dinners, and the bridal shower. The bridal shower was the first real test. I agreed to go, wanting to support Emily, but Daniel spent the entire evening belittling me subtly, making jokes about my work, commenting on my weight, and interrupting me whenever I tried to speak. Emily seemed oblivious or unwilling to confront him. That night, I left feeling emotionally drained and humiliated. The next step was the wedding itself. Emily called me, excited, asking if I had RSVP'd. I told her honestly that I couldn't attend the wedding because I was uncomfortable being around Daniel. I explained that his behavior toward me over the past 2 years had been hurtful, and I did not want to participate in an event where I would be treated poorly in front of family and friends. I stressed that my love for her had not changed and that I would always be there for her personally, just not in situations that included Daniel. Emily's reaction was extreme. She accused me of being selfish and controlling, said I was trying to ruin her special day, and claimed that I was the reason our family would be divided. She said that no matter how she felt about Daniel, I had a duty to attend because he was her fiancé and she wanted her entire family present. My parents called me afterward and asked me to reconsider, saying that it was just one day and that I should put my feelings aside for the sake of family. I stood firm, explaining that attending would require me to ignore years of disrespect and personal boundaries, which I could not do. They said I was being dramatic, that family comes first, and that Emily's happiness should outweigh my discomfort. Since then, Emily has stopped speaking to me except for short, tense texts, calling me a toxic sister and selfish. Other relatives have taken sides, with some agreeing I should go for Emily's sake and others supporting my decision. I feel torn because I love Emily deeply, but the thought of being in the same room as Daniel makes me physically anxious. I also worry that attending would reinforce to Emily that it is acceptable for someone to treat me poorly without consequence. I tried to explain that my refusal to attend is not about her wedding itself, but about protecting my own mental and emotional well-being. I keep replaying the situation in my head, wondering if I am overreacting or being too harsh. Am I really in the wrong for choosing to distance myself from the wedding because of her fiancé, even if it upsets Emily? I don't want to lose my sister, but I also feel that my boundaries are non-negotiable. I've considered compromising by attending only the ceremony or just sending a gift, but I worry that even brief contact will result in the same pattern of disrespect. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé, despite her and my family's insistence that I should put my discomfort aside for her special day. AITA for ruining my best friend's wedding because of my principles. I, 28F, have been best friends with Hannah, 29F, since college. We've been inseparable for over a decade, sharing everything from our most embarrassing moments to our deepest secrets. Hannah is vibrant, kind, and incredibly organized, which is why it came as a shock when she asked me to be her maid of honor for her wedding last year. I was overjoyed and immediately said yes, spending weeks helping her plan, picking out bridesmaid dresses, and coordinating with the other bridal party members. I genuinely wanted her day to be perfect. Everything was going smoothly until a few months before the wedding, when Hannah told me she wanted me to do something I was uncomfortable with. She explained that she and her fiancé, Marcus, 31M, had decided to include a surprise wedding vow reading from the guests during the ceremony. She asked me to write a speech on behalf of the bridal party, recounting our friendship stories and giving heartfelt wishes. I agreed at first, assuming it would be similar to a traditional toast. When she sent me the guidelines, I realized the expectation was much more involved. She wanted me to subtly address controversial topics, including personal opinions on sensitive political and social issues, framed as life lessons or moral insights. Hannah told me it was important to her that her wedding reflect her values, which included very specific stances on issues I disagreed with. She wanted me to incorporate these into the speech as if they were my own beliefs. I told her up front that I wasn't comfortable presenting political opinions on such a public stage. especially ones I didn't fully agree with. She insisted that it wouldn't be a problem, and that as her best friend, it was important for me to honor her wishes. Over the next few weeks, I tried to compromise by offering to focus solely on our friendship and personal stories, but Hannah kept pushing for me to weave in these ideological points. I felt trapped. I tried reasoning with her, saying that presenting beliefs that weren't mine could be misinterpreted as me endorsing them and could damage my reputation, especially since many of her family members are extremely influential in our city. Hannah became frustrated and upset, saying I was being unreasonable and putting politics over our friendship. The tension between us grew, and she began confiding in our mutual friends, who largely agreed that I should just go along to make her happy. I felt betrayed and isolated because they didn't seem to consider my discomfort valid. A month before the wedding, I made the difficult decision to step down from writing the speech. I explained to Hannah that I would still be in the wedding and support her in any other way, but I could not be responsible for publicly representing her ideological beliefs. She was devastated. She cried, said I had betrayed her on the most important day of her life, and accused me of letting everyone down. She also told me that she might ask someone else who was more aligned with her views, which I understood. I genuinely wanted her to have a beautiful ceremony, but I couldn't betray my own values. The day of the wedding arrived, and I was nervous but tried to be cheerful. The ceremony started, and everything seemed perfect. Then came the part where the guest readings were supposed to happen. Someone else read the speech I was originally supposed to write, but Hannah had apparently edited it to include very explicit political commentary. The crowd, which included some distant relatives, colleagues, and old family friends, reacted awkwardly. There were murmurs, some confused glances, and a few people visibly uncomfortable. I later found out that a heated debate started during the reception because of those readings, and some of the guests left early. Hannah told me later that evening that she thought the wedding felt tense and not as joyful as she had imagined. She didn't explicitly blame me in front of everyone, but I could sense the disappointment and resentment when she spoke to me privately. In the weeks following the wedding, our friendship deteriorated. She stopped answering my messages, and mutual friends told me she had expressed that I had ruined her special day and put our friendship in jeopardy. I tried reaching out to explain that I had only acted according to my conscience and that I had still supported her in countless ways before and during the wedding, but she didn't respond. A few of our friends are on my side, saying that I was justified in not speaking on beliefs I didn't hold, while others insist I should have just gone with it for one day, and that my refusal was selfish. I feel torn because I truly loved Hannah and wanted to honor her day, but I also feel that compromising my principles on something so public and personal would have been wrong. I didn't want to create conflict, and I didn't intend to ruin her wedding, but I wonder if my refusal was too rigid, especially given how important it was to her. My conscience tells me I did the right thing, but the aftermath has been devastating, not only for a friendship, but also socially, as many of our mutual friends are now distant or uncomfortable around me. So, AITA for refusing to write a speech that included beliefs I didn't agree with, even though it caused tension and unhappiness at my best friend's wedding. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house during his recovery period. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a small city apartment that I've worked hard to afford, and while it's not huge, it's cozy and comfortable for me. I have my own routines, my own life, and I generally enjoy solitude or hanging out with my close friends. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been more carefree and a little impulsive. She recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Josh, 30M, whom I'll admit I didn't really know all that well, though Emily has been dating him for 3 years. A few weeks ago, Emily called me in a panic. Josh had been involved in a minor accident while skateboarding. He ended up with a fractured wrist and a mild concussion. He's okay physically, but the doctors told him he would need to rest for at least a month and avoid doing anything strenuous. Emily, who works full-time and is in the middle of wedding planning, said she couldn't take time off to care for him properly, and she asked if he could stay with me temporarily so she could manage work and other responsibilities. She framed it as just a week or two and insisted it would be easier for him to recover at my place because it's closer to her work than his. I hesitated. I have a very strict routine, and my apartment is small. I work from home and need quiet to focus. Plus, I barely knew Josh well enough to feel comfortable hosting him for an extended period. I explained that I wasn't sure I could accommodate him, especially because I'm not really set up for someone who needs constant care. Emily got upset and told me I was being selfish and that family should support each other. She said Josh had nobody else who could look after him and that he would be safer at my place than alone in his apartment. Feeling pressured, I suggested maybe helping in other ways like arranging a nurse or temporary home care for him, or even me checking in on him daily. Emily dismissed these ideas, saying it wouldn't be the same as having him physically present at my home. She then made me feel guilty by saying that Josh was basically family now, and that it would be cruel to turn him away. Finally, I told her the truth. My apartment just isn't suited for someone recovering from an injury. I don't have space, I don't have medical equipment, and I can't drop everything to make sure he's okay all day. I offered to cook meals and run errands for him at his place, or even pay for a temporary caregiver if necessary. Emily got very defensive and told me I was being cold and controlling, accusing me of caring more about my comfort than her fiancé's health. She said she didn't understand how I could refuse to help a family member in need. 2 days later, Emily called again, this time angrier. She said she and Josh had already made other arrangements to stay with one of his friends, and that she hoped I would rethink my priorities about family. Josh didn't say anything directly to me during this time, so I don't know if he feels upset. After that, I started getting messages from mutual family members asking why I wouldn't help. My parents were a bit disappointed too, though they said they understood my perspective after I explained my apartment situation. Some cousins and aunts chimed in online, saying I was overreacting and not being a good sister, while others agree that hosting someone with a medical condition requires more commitment than just letting them crash on a couch. Honestly, I still feel like I made the right choice for myself. I don't have the skills or resources to care for someone like that, and I don't think it's unreasonable to prioritize my living space and personal well-being. At the same time, I feel guilty for upsetting Emily and for possibly hurting our relationship, especially with her wedding coming up. I've tried to help in other ways like coordinating grocery deliveries and offering to pick up medications, but it doesn't seem to satisfy her. I'm now wondering if I was genuinely being selfish or if it's reasonable to set boundaries, even with family, when it comes to something that significantly disrupts my life. The fallout has made me anxious, and I'm worried that refusing to host Josh might create tension not just with Emily, but with other family members who might think I'm uncaring. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my apartment during his recovery, even though she framed it as a short-term family favor? Or am I justified in setting boundaries for my own space and capacity? AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding at my house, even though he insists it's the only practical option. I, 32F, have always had a tense relationship with my younger brother, Jason, 29M. We weren't always at odds, but over the years, his controlling tendencies and my desire for personal boundaries have caused some friction. A few months ago, he got engaged to his fiancée, Emily, 27F, and the excitement was genuine at first. I was happy for him, even though I knew the planning process would probably be a source of stress for me. Jason and Emily are the type of couple who want everything to be perfect, but insist on cutting costs wherever possible. They initially suggested hosting the wedding in a traditional venue, but after a few quotes, they declared it way too expensive and started floating the idea of holding at my house. At first, I laughed it off, thinking he was joking, but it quickly became clear that he wasn't. They argued that my house was the perfect size and that it would save them thousands. My house is not small. It's a 3-story, 4-bedroom place with a medium-sized backyard, but it's also my sanctuary. I moved in 3 years ago after leaving a high-stress job and a previous roommate situation, and I finally felt like I had a space that was entirely mine. I like having control over it, decorating however I please, and hosting small gatherings on my own terms. The thought of turning it into a wedding venue for 100-plus people was horrifying to me. When I initially declined, Jason and Emily started pressuring me heavily. They said things like, "It's just a backyard wedding. How hard could it be? And we really can't afford a proper venue. And we want it to feel intimate, which your house would provide." I tried explaining that it wasn't a financial issue for me. It was about comfort and boundaries. I don't want strangers walking through my home, and I certainly don't want to worry about liability if someone got hurt on my property. They said I was being selfish and dramatic, and Emily even implied that I don't care about family. Things escalated when Jason suggested he would rent a tent and everything, so it won't be messy. I reminded him that my backyard has delicate landscaping, a garden I spent years cultivating, and outdoor furniture that isn't designed for large events. He responded that we could just move the furniture and cover the garden, but I refused, saying it felt invasive and that my home is not a rental property. Over the next few weeks, the arguments became more frequent and more personal. Jason accused me of always putting my needs above everyone else, even though I frequently help him financially and emotionally. Emily chimed in on one of our calls, saying, "You'll regret not helping your brother on the biggest day of his life." They also suggested I could compromise by letting them use the backyard while I stayed upstairs, but I didn't see that as a reasonable solution. A wedding isn't just a backyard barbecue. There are caterers, photographers, music, and guests constantly moving through the house. It would be a logistical nightmare and a huge invasion of my personal space. I reached out to other family members for advice. My parents sided with me privately, saying that no one should feel obligated to host an event in their home if they're uncomfortable. However, Jason insisted that family should make sacrifices for each other, and he refused to consider other venues. At this point, he started sending me articles about budget-friendly wedding venues and how easy backyard weddings are, along with passive-aggressive texts like, "We'll just have to make it work somehow." The tension finally came to a head at a family dinner. Jason bluntly told me, "If you don't let us have the wedding here, it will be on your conscience that you ruined my day." I was shocked by the statement and calmly replied, "My house is not available, and your wedding is yours. Responsibility to plan, not mine. I love you, but I will not compromise my home and my comfort for this." Jason stormed out, and Emily rolled her eyes and muttered something about family always being difficult. After that, Jason started limiting contact with me, only communicating through text about minor wedding details he assumed I would help with, like borrowing chairs or lending my kitchenware. I politely declined, saying I could not accommodate such requests. My parents have been trying to mediate, but Jason claims they are taking my sister's side and refuses to speak with them about it. I'm aware that my refusal has caused a lot of family tension, and some relatives have quietly suggested I could just give in for one day. But I feel strongly that letting this happen would set a dangerous precedent. If I host his wedding, it will send a message that my boundaries and comfort are negotiable whenever he wants something. Additionally, it would be a huge stressor, and I would likely be responsible for everything going wrong, from spilled drinks to broken furniture. I do not want to attend the wedding if it's somewhere else because I feel too angry and disappointed, but I also don't want to completely cut ties with my brother. I tried offering alternative solutions, like helping him research venues or helping plan certain aspects of the wedding remotely, but Jason rejected everything that didn't involve my house. So, here I am, frustrated, hurt, and feeling guilty because other family members think I'm being stubborn and unsupportive. I know my house isn't their responsibility, and I have every right to say no, but the intensity of their reactions has me questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their wedding, despite their insistence that it's the only practical option. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a long-held family secret. I, 32F, have always been the quiet one in my family. My younger sister, Lily, 29F, is the complete opposite. Loud, charismatic, and the type of person who can charm anyone instantly. Growing up, our relationship was close but complicated. Our parents divorced when I was 12, and while I coped by keeping my head down and focusing on school, Lily became the family's center of attention. Over the years, I've learned to embrace my role as the background sister, and I've always tried to support her no matter what. That said, things took a dramatic turn recently. Lily got engaged to her college sweetheart, Mark, last year. I was genuinely happy for her, even though Mark has always seemed a bit controlling in subtle ways. I noticed the small things, like how he'd make jokes about her career choices or pressure her into doing things she didn't want to do. I tried to ignore it at first because I figured every couple has their quirks, and Lily seemed happy enough. When she started planning the wedding, I offered to help in any way I could. I'm good with logistics and budgeting, and I thought it would be fun to contribute. However, the excitement quickly faded when my parents made a request that shocked me. They asked me not to bring my boyfriend, James, 33M, to the wedding. Their reasoning was that he was too different from the family's usual social circle, and they felt it would make the other guests uncomfortable. I was hurt, but I tried to reason with them, explaining that James has been a part of my life for years and that excluding him felt disrespectful. My parents brushed it off, saying it was for Lily's big day and that I should understand. I reluctantly agreed to go alone because I didn't want to create tension, but things got worse. About 3 months before the wedding, I was helping Lily with her seating chart when I overheard a conversation she was having with her maid of honor. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I happened to be nearby when Lily mentioned something shocking. She was planning to exclude our father from the ceremony. When I asked why, she told me it was because she had just discovered that he isn't her biological father. This blew me away. According to her, our mother had an affair shortly before Lily was born, and our father raised her believing she was his child. Lily had only recently found out and said she felt betrayed but didn't want anyone else to know because it would ruin the perfect wedding image. I was stunned. I confronted my mother about it, and she admitted the truth. She said she had an affair during a particularly rough period in her marriage, and that Lily was the result. She apologized, but the fact that this secret had been hidden for nearly 3 decades hit me hard. I felt like my entire family had built a life on a lie, and suddenly the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It felt like a performance to hide the truth. I decided to speak with Lily about it privately, hoping we could find a way to navigate this situation without adding stress to her wedding. I told her that I couldn't be part of an event where my father would be publicly humiliated by being excluded based on something beyond his control. She accused me of trying to ruin her day and said that some truths are better left hidden. I argued that pretending everything is fine when the foundation of our family has been shaken wasn't something I could ethically support. We ended up in a huge argument, and she told me that if I didn't attend the wedding on her terms, I was effectively choosing to be estranged from her. I tried to compromise by suggesting that we keep the wedding private and small, or perhaps include our father in a way that doesn't overshadow the day. She refused, insisting that she had the right to control her wedding. My parents were furious with me as well, accusing me of being selfish and turning a joyous occasion into a moral crusade. They said I was overreacting and that Lily's happiness should be my priority. My siblings tried to mediate, but the more I tried to reason, the more entrenched everyone became. After several weeks of back and forth, I made my decision. I sent Lily a letter explaining that I loved her and wanted her to be happy, but I could not attend a wedding built on exclusion and secrecy. I expressed my hope that we could reconcile afterward, but that I needed to take a stand for what felt morally right. The fallout was immediate. My parents accused me of being dramatic and ungrateful. My sister stopped responding to my messages entirely. Even friends who were initially supportive of my decision began to question if I had overstepped. Now, it's been 2 months since the wedding, and the family is fractured. Some relatives have taken my side, while others have labeled me as the antagonist who ruined Lily's special day. I genuinely feel conflicted because part of me still loves my sister deeply, but another part cannot ignore the feeling that participating would be complicit in something I believe is ethically wrong. I keep replaying the event in my head and wondering if I could have handled it differently. Some days I feel guilty for prioritizing principle over family bonds, and other days I feel relieved that I stood by my convictions. I want to repair my relationship with Lily eventually, but right now she refuses to engage with me. My parents are still cold toward me, and I feel like I've been painted as the villain in a story I didn't even start. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering the secret about her paternity and her decision to exclude our father. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a family secret that came out recently. I, 32F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing everything from school projects to our first heartbreaks. Our parents, while strict in some ways, were loving and supportive, and family gatherings were always lively, if occasionally chaotic. I never imagined I would be in a situation where attending a wedding could cause so much tension. But here we are. A few weeks ago, I accidentally stumbled upon a very sensitive family secret. While I was visiting my parents to drop off some old photographs for Emily's wedding slideshow, I found a stack of letters in my father's study. Curiosity got the better of me, and I read them. What I discovered completely shocked me. My father had a long-term affair with a woman in another state, and the letters indicated that he had children from that relationship. I was devastated. This wasn't just some minor slip-up or a brief indiscretion. It had been ongoing for years, and my father had hidden it from all of us. I spent the next few days trying to process what I had learned. I confronted my mother, who broke down and confirmed everything. She told me that she had found out a while ago, but didn't know how to handle it. She said she was staying in the marriage for the sake of the family, and that my father was extremely apologetic and wanted to reconcile in some way. Honestly, I was conflicted because, despite the betrayal, I still loved my father and didn't want to ruin the family completely. Around the same time, Emily came to me with a lot of excitement about her wedding plans. She asked for my help with almost everything, from choosing her dress to organizing the seating chart. I wanted to be supportive, but I couldn't stop thinking about the secret I had uncovered. I felt like my perspective of my parents, and by extension, my family, was completely altered. Things came to a head when Emily announced that she wanted to invite extended family to the wedding, including my father's side of the family. I realized that if I attended, I would have to be around my father and the people he had been hiding the secret from. The thought of sitting at a wedding table with people who didn't know about the affair and possibly seeing my father interact normally with them made me feel sick. I tried talking to my father about it. I explained that I was struggling with the betrayal and that attending the wedding would be emotionally impossible for me right now. He was hurt, but somewhat understanding. My mother, however, told me I was overreacting and that Emily needed me to be there. I decided to talk to Emily honestly, hoping she would understand. I told her that I loved her and wanted to support her, but I couldn't attend the wedding because I couldn't face the family dynamic as it currently stood. I offered to help in every other way, planning, organizing, even hosting a pre-wedding dinner, but I couldn't physically be there on her wedding day. Her reaction was worse than I expected. She accused me of being selfish and said I was letting my anger toward our parents ruin her big day. She said she understood my feelings, but that I was essentially abandoning her when she needed me most. My father called me later that night and said I was overly dramatic and letting a temporary feeling destroy a lifelong memory for everyone else. My mother cried on the phone, telling me I was tearing the family apart. I've tried to explain that it's not about her wedding, but about my inability to process what's happened with my parents. I don't want to ruin her day by being visibly upset or creating tension at the wedding. I also don't want to be around my father without feeling angry, hurt, and betrayed. Despite all this, my extended family is now taking sides. Some relatives say I am right to take care of my mental health and protect myself, while others think I am being dramatic and selfish for not showing up. The part that makes me feel even worse is that Emily is now avoiding me. She hasn't spoken to me much since the conversation, and some mutual friends have expressed disappointment. I feel like I'm caught in a moral gray area. On one hand, I want to protect my emotional well-being and be honest about my limits. On the other, I fear I might be hurting my sister in a way that she will never forgive. I've considered going to therapy to work through my feelings, and I've offered to have mediated conversations with my parents to try to reconcile at least somewhat before the wedding. But the truth is, right now, I cannot attend. I feel like a terrible sister for not being there, but I also feel like I would be failing myself if I forced myself to go and potentially broke down during the ceremony. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of this family secret and my inability to be around my parents without emotional distress. I've been trying to think about compromise, like attending only the reception or sending a heartfelt video message. But Emily insists she wants me there in person for the whole event. I'm torn between protecting my mental health and potentially damaging my relationship with my sister permanently. I feel stuck in a place where every choice seems to hurt someone I care about. I want to do what's right, but I also don't want to betray my own emotional boundaries. Has anyone else been in a situation where attending a major family event felt impossible because of unresolved trauma or family betrayal? I'm struggling to figure out if I'm being unfair or if my sister's expectations are unreasonable given the circumstances. I know people will likely say I should put my sister first, but I genuinely can't see how I can do that without compromising my own mental stability. I've offered numerous alternatives to support her, and I feel like I've been as accommodating as possible without actually attending. So, Reddit AITA for making the difficult decision not to attend my sister's wedding in order to protect my emotional well-being, despite the risk of permanently straining our relationship. AITA for refusing to help my sister move her entire household because I should just sacrifice a weekend for family. So I, 32M, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F. We've always had a somewhat complicated relationship. Growing up, I was the responsible older sibling, and she was more of a free spirit. I think that dynamic has carried into adulthood. I have a steady job in tech, live in a small apartment in the city, and generally prioritize stability and routines. Emily, on the other hand, has always moved around a lot. Jobs, apartments, cities, you name it. She's charming, smart, and talented, but sometimes impulsive, and that affect her life choices. Emily recently decided to move across the country for a new job opportunity. I knew she had been planning this for a while, but the announcement came rather suddenly. She called me the day after signing her lease to ask if I could help her move her entire household this coming weekend. I was caught off guard because moving across the country is no small feat, and she wanted me to help her pack, drive a large rental truck, and basically manage half of the move logistics over 2 days. I told her honestly that I couldn't take the weekend off work on such short notice. My workload is heavy, and I don't have the flexibility to drop everything and spend an entire weekend moving someone else's furniture across multiple states. She immediately got upset. She said that I was being selfish and not supporting my family, and that I should just sacrifice a weekend to help her. I explained that I could help in other ways. I offered to pack smaller items in boxes she could easily transport herself, coordinate donations for things she didn't want to bring, and even help her set up the new apartment remotely by ordering furniture or arranging delivery schedules. She dismissed all of this, saying none of that counted as real help. According to her, real help is lifting heavy furniture, driving, and essentially being a moving laborer for her entire household. I told her that I could realistically spend a few hours here and there on the weekend helping with smaller tasks, but I simply could not devote an entire weekend to moving. This turned into a long argument over text, where she accused me of never being there when it matters and always choosing work over family. I tried to reason with her that I do care about her and her move, but I also have obligations that I cannot just ignore. The conversation escalated. Emily started bringing up old grievances from our childhood, times when I didn't hang out with her or attend her events. She said I had always been the responsible one who gets the breaks while she was left to fend for herself, implying that helping her now is some kind of karmic obligation. I reminded her that I have helped her in the past when I could, including lending money, babysitting her dog, and helping her move smaller apartments closer to our city. She countered that those things don't count because they weren't the big move she needed help with now. At one point, I suggested she hire professional movers, which she completely rejected. She said it was too expensive and that it would be cold compared to having family help. I pointed out that moving across the country is physically demanding, and I wasn't willing to risk injury or neglect work responsibilities just for sentimental reasons. She accused me of being heartless, selfish, and incapable of prioritizing family. The tension escalated even further when I reminded her that I have my own life, apartment, and responsibilities. I also mentioned that she's always been impulsive with major life decisions, and that sometimes she needs to plan better instead of expecting others to drop everything to accommodate her. She interpreted this as me blaming her for needing help, and said I was being cruel and unsupportive. After that, we stopped texting for a few days. She called our mom, complaining that I was refusing to help my sister in her time of need and painting me as selfish. Our mom tried to mediate, saying that I could maybe take one day to help her, but I explained that even one full day isn't feasible because of work and other obligations. Mom sided with Emily to an extent, saying families should make sacrifices for each other, but also acknowledged that I've always been reliable in my own way, just not in the dramatic gestures Emily wanted. Emily moved out last weekend. I helped minimally, mainly by packing small boxes she could handle alone and giving advice over the phone. She's now living across the country, and our communication has been strained. She has made a few comments on social media implying that I didn't care enough to help, and I know that our mom has mentioned it at family gatherings. I feel guilty because I do care about my sister, but I also feel like I have boundaries that I need to maintain. I don't think it's reasonable to demand someone drop all responsibilities for a physically exhausting and time-consuming task, especially with little notice. I also feel like the expectation that I should sacrifice my entire weekend for a move that was planned impulsively is unfair. AITA for refusing to help Emily move her entire household this weekend and instead offering limited assistance. Some extra context. Emily has a history of expecting immediate help for major life events. I've always helped with smaller tasks and emergencies, but I rarely drop everything at a moment's notice. She has friends and a partner who could also help, but she seemed intent on relying solely on family. I'm not opposed to helping, but I need notice and boundaries to make it realistic. I'm fully aware that family sometimes requires sacrifices, but I also feel like emotional blackmail and guilt trips shouldn't dictate whether I risk my health, job, and personal time. I want to maintain a relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to feel coerced into doing something that would be extremely stressful and unrealistic. AITA for refusing to lend my car to my sister after she repeatedly disrespected me. 28F, have a sister, Emma, 31F, who has always had a way of pushing boundaries and making everything about her. Our parents passed away a few years ago, and while Emma and I were close as kids, adulthood has definitely strained our relationship. I've tried setting boundaries, but she often ignores them. This situation revolves around my car, which I recently bought with my own savings. It's a used SUV that I've been maintaining carefully because I plan to use it for a long road trip this summer. Emma knows I am very meticulous about my belongings, especially my car. A couple of weeks ago, she called me out of the blue, asking if she could borrow it for a few days because her car was in the shop. I told her I wasn't comfortable lending it because I need it for work and personal errands, but I offered to help her with a rental car or find alternative transportation. She didn't take that well and started raising her voice, accusing me of being selfish and not helping family. I stayed calm and repeated my offer to assist in other ways, but she ended the call angrily. A few days later, Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced. She had her dog with her and immediately started asking about the car again. I reiterated that I couldn't lend it, explaining that I have a full schedule this week and am saving the car for the road trip. She rolled her eyes, saying I was overreacting and that she just needed it for 2 days. When I said no firmly, she got visibly upset and started making passive-aggressive comments about me, hoarding things and never trusting anyone. I told her that borrowing a car is different from borrowing a shirt or a book, and I have the right to say no. Emma then threatened to take my car anyway, claiming that she just needed to run some errands and that it wasn't a big deal. I reminded her that it is illegal to take someone else's property without permission and that I could call the police if necessary. She left after another argument, but continued texting me all evening, alternating between guilt-tripping and outright insults. She said things like, "I can't believe you're letting a car come before family, and you're such a selfish little sister." I didn't respond. The next day, she called again, this time trying a different tactic. She said she was desperate because her work schedule had changed and she had appointments she couldn't miss. I told her I understood her situation, but still couldn't lend my car. I suggested she could try Uber, a taxi, or ask a friend for help. She ignored my suggestions and started sending messages accusing me of playing favorites with my car and never thinking of her. At this point, I realized that saying no was not enough, so I drafted a clear message explaining my reasoning. The car is my personal property. I need it for work and future plans, and I cannot lend it to her under any circumstances. I also said that I am happy to help her figure out other ways to get around. She read it and then posted a long rant on social media about me, painting me as an ungrateful sister who refuses to help family. Several mutual friends reached out, asking me if I had done something wrong. I explained the situation honestly, and most people agreed that I am within my rights to say no, but a few said I was too harsh and should compromise for the sake of family. A week later, Emma showed up again at my door, this time with her boyfriend. She tried to argue in person that I was overreacting and that my refusal was cold. I stayed calm and repeated my stance. Her boyfriend chimed in, saying I was being unreasonable and that lending the car wouldn't hurt me. I told him the decision isn't negotiable and that this was not about inconvenience, but about boundaries and personal property. Emma got extremely angry, started yelling that I was selfish and immature, and accused me of trying to ruin her life by not lending my car. I shut the door after a heated exchange. Since then, Emma has been avoiding direct contact with me, but continues to post passive-aggressive things on social media, which her mutual friends see. I feel conflicted because part of me worries that I'm being too rigid and that maybe I should have compromised for family. On the other hand, I feel strongly that repeatedly pressuring me, showing up unannounced, and threatening to take my property crosses a line. I also believe that setting boundaries is important and that constantly bending to her demands would only reinforce her disrespectful behavior. I haven't contacted her since the last incident and am leaning toward maintaining my boundaries firmly, even if it strains our relationship further. Some friends say I am justified, while others think I should have let her borrow the car at least once to keep the peace. I just don't want to feel forced into giving up something that is mine, especially when she refuses to respect my decisions. So, AITA for refusing to lend my car to my sister after she repeatedly disrespected me, even though she claims she really needs it and says I'm being selfish. AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after she accused me of ruining her birthday party. I, 32F, have always been the reliable aunt. I don't have children, and I genuinely enjoy spending time with my niece, Lily, 8F. My sister, Hannah, 35F, is a single mom and works long hours as a nurse. Over the years, I've helped out a lot with Lily, school runs, sleepovers, birthday parties, and even last-minute doctor visits. I've never minded. I like being involved in her life. But recently, something happened that has caused a huge rift, and now I'm questioning whether I really should continue being so involved. It all started a few weeks ago. Hannah asked me if I could babysit Lily on a Saturday, because she had to cover an extra shift to the hospital. I had already made plans to visit my boyfriend, but I usually bend my schedule for Lily, so I said yes, thinking it wouldn't be too difficult. I asked Hannah if there was anything special she wanted me to do for Lily that day, like crafts, games, or movie time, and she mentioned that it would be Lily's birthday practice day because her birthday was coming up and they wanted to try out the games she'd be doing with her friends. I thought it sounded cute. On the day, Lily seemed excited, and we started with a few crafts she had planned. Later, I suggested we play a game she liked, but she was more interested in setting up her stuffed animals for a party. I tried to encourage her to join the other game, but she was very insistent about doing her own thing. I figured it wasn't a big deal. Let the kid have fun, right? So I helped her set up the stuffed animal party. After that, I thought it would be nice to make a small snack like fruit and crackers. Lily asked for chocolate cupcakes, which I didn't have, but I offered to bake some quickly. She was upset when she realized it would take longer than she expected. At this point, she got more and more frustrated, and then she said something I will never forget. You're ruining my birthday practice. I hate this. I try to calm her down, explaining that I was just trying to help her enjoy the day, but she became increasingly upset. Eventually, I called Hannah to explain that Lily was really stressed and upset. Hannah said she would try to leave work early, but I could tell she was annoyed with me. I managed to get Lily to calm down eventually, and we finished the day quietly, but I was emotionally drained. I dropped her off when Hannah arrived, and she seemed fine for the moment, but later that evening, I got a series of texts from Hannah. Hannah was furious. She said I had ruined Lily's birthday practice and that I didn't understand her child at all. She accused me of being controlling because I insisted on the games and snacks I thought were best and not letting Lily do what she wanted. I tried to explain that I had followed her lead, helped her set up her ideas, and even tried baking cupcakes, but she was adamant that I had somehow interfered with her creative process. Over the next few days, things escalated. Hannah sent multiple texts blaming me for Lily being upset and acting out. She told me she didn't want me babysitting Lily anymore because I clearly can't handle it without making her miserable. I responded calmly, saying that I was always happy to help, but it felt unreasonable to expect me to completely anticipate an 8-year-old's every whim without any guidance. I also reminded her that Lily seemed happy for most of the day and that children often get frustrated, which isn't anyone's fault. Hannah then sent a message that really stung. She said that if I ever babysat again, she would have to supervise everything, and that maybe I should step back from being involved in Lily's life. She implied that I was overstepping boundaries and that my intentions didn't matter. I was hurt because I genuinely love Lily and thought I was being supportive. I've always tried to respect her parenting style, and I've never imposed my own ideas, unless asked for help. Now I've refused further babysitting requests until Hannah can calm down and maybe see that I was only trying to help. She is telling other family members that I am difficult and unreliable, and that I've upset Lily, which makes family gatherings awkward. Everyone is taking Hannah's side because she's the mom, but I feel like I'm being unfairly vilified. I also can't help but feel like Hannah is projecting some stress from work onto me. I've tried to set clear boundaries and communicate openly, but she refuses to see my perspective. I don't want to be estranged from my niece, but I also don't want to be blamed for a child's frustration that is completely normal. So, AITA for refusing to babysit Lily after she accused me of ruining her birthday practice day? I feel like I was doing my best, and that it's unfair to be held responsible for an 8-year-old's emotions, but maybe I should have handled things differently. I know it sounds like a small thing, but this has become a major issue in my family, and I feel trapped between wanting to support my sister and wanting to protect myself from unfair criticism. I'm hoping for some perspective on whether I overreacted or if Hannah's response was unreasonable. This situation has been tense for weeks, and I'm afraid it might permanently affect my relationship with Lily if I don't handle it carefully. I really want to be a good aunt, but I also don't want to be treated as a scapegoat for normal childhood frustration. Has anyone dealt with something similar? Am I wrong for stepping back? Or should I try to find a way to mend things with Hannah despite feeling unfairly judged? I'm conflicted because I love my niece and want to be in her life, but I also need to set boundaries for my own mental health. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment during his visit, even though it caused a huge family fight. So, here's the situation. I, 28F, live in a fairly small one-bedroom apartment in a city about 3 hours away from my hometown. I work full-time and also take care of a lot of responsibilities in my personal life, so my living space is extremely important to me. I like to have control over my environment, my schedule, and my personal space. I also have a cat who is very sensitive to changes in routine. My sister, Emily, 32F, is getting married in a few months to her fiancé, Mark, 30M. Emily and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up very close, but as adults, we clash a lot. She can be very controlling and has a habit of guilt-tripping me, but I usually tolerate it because she is my sister. Mark is generally nice, but tends to go along with whatever Emily says. A few weeks ago, Emily called me excitedly and told me that she and Mark were planning a short trip to my city before their wedding. She said they wanted to spend a few days with me and my partner, Alex, 8:30 a.m., and asked if Mark could stay in my apartment with us because the hotels were too expensive. I was immediately uncomfortable. My apartment is tiny, and the idea of hosting someone I barely know in my private space for several days felt overwhelming. I told her that I wasn't sure and that I needed to check with Alex first. Alex and I talked about it, and we both agreed that we did not want to host Mark in our apartment. We can handle guests occasionally, but having someone stay in such a small space for multiple nights felt like it would invade our personal life and routine. I offered to help them find a hotel nearby and even promised to take them out to dinner and show them around the city. I tried to make it clear that we wanted to spend time with them, just not have them staying with us. When I told Emily this, she immediately got upset. She said that I was being selfish and that families should accommodate each other. She claimed that we had plenty of room for one more person and that I was overreacting. I explained again that our apartment is very small, that Mark is a guest I barely know, and that my cat does not do well with strangers staying over. She countered that it was just a few days and that we were being ridiculous. I refused, and the conversation quickly escalated. Emily started saying things like, "You always make it about you," and "I can't believe you're putting your comfort over family." She even suggested that Alex and I were being rude because we weren't prioritizing her fiancé's needs. I tried to remain calm and reiterated my points, but she wouldn't listen. Things got worse when I told her that if they wanted to stay overnight, we could only accommodate one night at most, and even that would be tight. Emily got furious, saying that we were hosting in name only and that it was insulting. She started bringing up past events where she claimed I had been unhelpful, which I felt was unfair and unrelated. Eventually, she hung up on me, and I didn't hear from her for a few days. A few days later, she sent a long message saying that she and Mark were disappointed in me and that they felt hurt by my decision. She said our refusal made her question whether I was capable of being a supportive sister. Alex and I decided not to respond immediately because we wanted to cool off. After some time, Emily showed up in my city unannounced with Mark, saying that they had already booked a hotel but still wanted to hang out with us. I tried to be polite but kept my boundaries. During their visit, Emily made subtle comments about my apartment being so small and inconvenient for guests, and Mark asked a few times if it would be okay to stay over just one night, which I politely declined. By the end of the visit, the tension was palpable. Emily left saying she was really hurt and that she felt like I didn't care about her happiness. Mark seemed uncomfortable but didn't push further. After they left, I shared the story with my best friend, who said I was completely reasonable and that Emily was overreacting. However, I keep thinking about the family dynamic. Our parents are fairly traditional and value hospitality, and I'm worried that Emily has told them I'm being selfish. I also feel some guilt because, yes, it is my sister's fiancé, and she was excited about visiting. But at the same time, I feel like my boundaries were completely reasonable, and our small apartment just cannot handle an extra adult comfortably. So, AITA here for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment, even though it caused a big fight and hurt feelings. I'm fully prepared to defend my position, but I also want to understand if I could have handled this differently to avoid family drama. The situation has caused ongoing tension, and I'm not sure how to navigate future interactions without compromising my personal space while maintaining some semblance of family harmony. I'm also concerned that Emily may continue to push for the same kind of accommodation when they visit again, and I don't want to end up in a similar confrontation. This whole situation has left me stressed and anxious because I want to maintain boundaries and respect my living space, but I also care about my sister and don't want to damage our relationship irreparably. I feel like I was trying to be polite, clear, and helpful in other ways, but Emily interprets it as selfishness. I can't help but wonder if refusing to let Mark stay over automatically makes me the bad guy in this situation, or if she's being unreasonable given the circumstances. I also wonder if part of this conflict stems from my own personality. I value my personal space intensely, and whether that is somehow incompatible with family expectations. It's a difficult balance to strike, especially because this is the first time Emily has asked me to host her fiancé for multiple nights. In the past, she has stayed over herself a few times, but that was different because she is my sister and we share history. Mark feels like a stranger to me, and having him in my home feels like a serious intrusion. So, ultimately, I'm asking AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment, even if it upset her and caused a fight? Or should I have just gone along with it despite my discomfort? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.